Hello my friends and fellow trainers, this is Aaron with TrainerTV. Glad to have you guys with us today, especially on an awesome deck profile day, addressing the question, will Kingdra be king? A deck profile. Now there are many people already looking at Kingdra, and right when I saw him, I knew it was a card that I wanted to build into a deck and play in a tournament, just because I think he has the potential to do really awesome things. Okay, now to really understand why I believe Kingdra to be a deck worthy of play, you would have to understand a time I used to play in. And I know you have all heard the phrase, history repeats itself, and it's true, especially in a card game. So let's go look at some of that, and then I will explain why I personally believe Kingdra will be king, and how I would play him. But keep in mind, it's how I would play him. It's my personal play style. Many people could find many different cards in here and replace them with others and do their own style, and I really encourage that. But if you want to base it off my style, go ahead, because I believe it will be a great deck. A quick look at the past, alright? So in front of us we have three cards, Dialga G, Dialga GX, and Crobat G. This was during a time when basic Pokemon had a strong presence, just like it does right now. Now let's look at this Dialga G first on the very far left. His first attack for 2 energy is Deafen. It does 10 damage, and it reads, your opponent can't play trainer cards or stadium cards from his or her hand during your opponent's next turn. Huh. Does that sound like a card we already know? Yes, it does. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, we're going to get it here in a second. Now let's look at Dialga GX. This is a card you could play next to him and use the Pokebody and the remove lost attack. But we didn't use it for the attack, we used it for the Pokebody. Now let's read it. Each Pokemon, both yours and your opponent's, can't use any Pokebodies. Alright? Excluding Pokemon SP. So this Dialga G's Pokebody still remained, as well as the other SP Pokemon. But, alright, so this shut off your Pokebodies. Now for those newer players, Pokebodies here and the Pokepower that you can see over in Crobat were two different things. Now we have what? Just the regular Pokemon powers, I believe it to be called. Or I'm sorry, it's ability now. Okay, so we took Pokebody and we took Pokepower and we put it into one ability, much like the very first cards just had Pokemon powers. Now it's gonna branch off again, I believe, as we see in this very new set in Primal Clash, Ancient Traits. Now Ancient Traits I kind of view as the old Pokebodies here. Except I don't believe there will be a card that can shut them off. But we will see in future sets. Maybe there is. Or there will be a card that can block that. Now let's look at this Crobat G. This Crobat G is the reason I knew the Crobat from Phantom Forces was going to be a great card. Everybody looked at it and said it was horrible, you know. It does 30 damage for its attack for 1 energy. And when you play it down, you can put 3 damage counters on your opponent's Pokemon or whatever. That's not a lot of damage. But once you have 4 of them out, or you're constantly taking them back to your hand, laying them down, you are setting a lot of damage for yourself. And this is what this Crobat G did as well. But when you played this one from your hand, you only put 1 damage counter. But you still had your Super Scoop Up like you do today. But this SP had many different cards as well that could bring them back to your hand. Now, what are these 3 cards today? They are Seismitoad EX and Crobat. And this is definitely a deck that is seeing play out there. Quaking Punch for your 30 damage. You know, putting a few trainer cards in here, you can really lock out your opponent the whole game while doing a pretty good amount of damage. They can't play their trainer cards. And then Crobat, you're lying down here with his ability, Surprise Bite, you know, and I already explained that when you just put 3 damage counters. So basically, you're locking and sniping, and that will be a great deck. And just coming into play, I wasn't around when Seismitoad first came out, but right when I saw the card, I was like, oh, that's Dialga G. And when I saw this Crobat coming out, I was like, oh, that's Crobat G. Let's put these together, and this is a deck. Now, this is just one of the many ways which a card game can repeat itself, and just see, you know, some of its old good decks reappear in a different fashion. Now, this will kind of be the same as our Kingdra. Now, let's look at the old king, as I call him. Now, this deck I played a lot. And what you would do is it's very cheap. This is a no energy cost here, and this is a 1 energy cost. So you do 40 damage, okay? But let me read it for you. You may discard 2 cards from your hand. If you do this, this attack does 40 damage plus 20 more damage, and does 20 damage to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. So he's doing 60, all right, right off, and 20 to the bench. But in this day, they also had plus powers, and I believe it was Expert Bout, but I don't know if that's the one today. But anyways, you could get his attack really high and be sniping. Now, the 2 cards you would discard in this deck was 2 Water Energy. And that was so that you could eventually use Aqua Stream here. And search your discard pile for as many Water Energy cards as you like. Show them to your opponent. This attack does 10 damage for each Water Energy card you choose. Put those cards on top of your deck and shuffle your deck afterwards. So what you would do is after 4 Dragon Pumps, right, you would have 8 Water Energy in your discard pile. Then you would use Aqua Stream for a straight 80, and it was insane, because Dragon Pump was already good enough. Now, and this will tie in with my Stage 2 video that I will make, even though I cover a lot of the points in this deck profile. With Stage 2 decks, unlike Basics, where you can play around with the Pokemon you put in, and you can switch up strategies, and, you know, you can kind of play to what your opponent has, in Stage 2s, you want from the very beginning to have 1 attacking Pokemon, and that is often your Stage 2, and that's going to be Kingdra. He's your 1 attacking Pokemon. All right? You have basically no other cards in this deck that you are going to be attacking with. And you pick 1 attack, such as Dragon Pump. Fortunately for Kingdra, Dragon Pump and Aqua Stream work really well together. So they were kind of your whole attack team. And so first, you pick your attacker. Second, you speed him up. All right? And back then, we had an awesome but horrible card because everybody had it, and it was a huge mess, and everybody complained, but it was awesome at the same time. I loved using him. It's Claydol, and he had this cosmic power, guys. You may choose up to 2 cards in your hand. Put them at the bottom of your deck, all right? If you do, draw cards until you have 6 cards in your hand. What? It's crazy, guys. So if you have 2 unwanted cards, you have 6 cards in your hand, you can throw 2, get 2. Or if you have less than 2, maybe you have 3 cards in your hand, put 2 of those at the bottom of your deck, draw 5. It was crazy. And you could have more than 1 out, all right? So people would play a 2-2 line, a 3-3 line, and I'll get into that in a minute. And you would just have crazy amount of speed. So you have your Kingdra, and you would support him, or support your main attacker if we're choosing another Stage 2 Pokemon, and then your attacker and your speed Pokemon. That's it, all right? Now, there's another card I will get to called a starter for that many people do include in a Stage 2, but Basically, you have two lines, your attacking line and your speed line. So let's go look at this new guy. Okay, this is what I call the new king, and he will be your main attacker in this deck, guys. His name is Kingdra, of course, just like the old one. His little Pokedex thing reads, it stores energy by sleeping at underwater depths at which no other life form can survive. It's already awesome, alright? This is an ancient trait, and I'll get here in a minute. But your main attack, guys, for this deck is going to be Dragon Blast for 150 damage, okay? So when you do this attack, you must discard a water energy and a lightning energy attached to this Pokemon. Now, right away, if you guys look at the Dragon Blast, you see it's a 3 energy attack. And people would be like, why would I play 3 energy attacks? You know, it will take a while. No, it doesn't. It'll take 2 turns because you have the growth trait here. When you attach an energy from your hand to this Pokemon, you may attach 2 energy cards, okay? So on your second turn, guys, you will have your Dragon Blast ready. Turn 2, alright? If you get your Kingdra out turn 2. And other stats, it has a fairy weakness, and this is very interesting, and we'll have to pay attention how this plays out. Since fairy decks, you know, aren't seeing a lot of play, but, you know, they're getting better, and they might be a factor in here that we'll have to think about. And it has a single energy retreat cost, unfortunately. If it was free, that would just make this deck even more crazy. So keep in mind, Kingdra is your main attacker. Now, how many of each card do we play here? We have our Horsea, we have our Seadra, and we have our Kingdra. With stage 2s, guys, I personally play, like I said, this is the way I would play the deck. I would play a 4-2-4 line. And for the beginners out there, the first number that is listed is going to be your basic Pokemon. The second, your stage 1. The third, your stage 2. Okay? And right away, you're like, why would you have 2, you know, stage 1s when you need 4 stage 2? Well, rare candy, guys. And rare candy is what's going to make this deck fast. And you have to use rare candy. And it, you know, it just supports it, and it supports the speed. So, ideally, turn 1, you have a Horsea out, and you attach the water energy. Okay? And another great thing is this Horsea, stage basics used to have 50. This one is 60, 50 to 60. So it doesn't have the lowest attack there. So it'll survive for a turn. Turn 1, Horsea, water energy. Turn 2, rare candy to Kingdra. Use growth, attach a water and a lightning, and use Dragon Blast for 150. Now, like you saw with our Claydol, we must speed up this deck. This deck is a stage 2 line. It will not work unless it has speed. So, our 2 options. And it'll be really up to your playstyle and really up to play testing for which one you use. So, let's look. We have Slurpuff and we have Flygon. Flygon is a new card. Some of us are really already familiar with Slurpuff, as we've seen them in Seismitoad decks. So it has a tasting ability. Once during your turn, you may draw a card. If this Pokemon is your active Pokemon, draw 1 more card. Now, with tasting, like Claydol, you can have 2 or 3 on your bench. So if you were only running Kingdra line and a Slurpuff line, I would play a 3-3. 3 of his basic, 3 of Slurpuff is stage 1. Now let's look at Flygon here. The first problem that with this Flygon is that it is a stage 2. So you will be relying both times on your rare candy. And that is going to be especially difficult since Seismitoad is out in the format locking your items, okay? But he has a much better ability than Slurpuff does. Once during your turn, you may choose either player. That player shuffles his or her hand into his or her deck and draws 4 cards. Alright, so instead of drawing 1 with Slurpuff, you're drawing 4 with Flygon. And this is up to your playstyle, guys. You could have a 2-1-2, basic, stage 1, stage 2, and just hope, that you can get them out quickly. Or you could play a 3-0-3 line and just rely solely on their rare candy. Now, another thing I want to bring up is Evo Soda. Now, this hasn't seen a lot of play so far, but you could search your deck for a card that evolves from one of your Pokemon, put it onto that Pokemon. Alright? So, if you're not drawing your rare candy, or you're playing a straight 3-3 line of Slurpuff, you're probably not using the cards in here to, like an Ultra Ball to search for a Slurpuff. You could just use an Evo Soda without discarding the cards. And this, I guess one thing I want to state here is that these trainers are going to be heavily dependent on how you personally play. An Evo Soda can be just as good as an Ultra Ball to get a Slurpuff out in certain situations. Especially if you don't want to run Ultra Ball with this deck, and I will get into that in a minute because there's a lot more support. So let's look at trainer support. I have 2 sections, then and now. This then section was what I played with the old King, or the old Kingdra. All right, so we have a plus power here. Attach a plus power to one of your Pokemon, and this only lasted 1 turn. If the Pokemon plus power is attached to the attack does 10 more damage to the active Pokemon. This is much like Hypnotoxic Laser today, all right? But you poison them instead, and you have a chance of sleeping. So that 1 damage, or that 10 damage that you did with plus power, is the 10 damage you're going to get from poisoning your opponent with Hypnotoxic Laser. And you get the extra effect of that it's constantly poisoned, and he may fall asleep. Now, the other card you would have to attach to your Kingdra is this Expert Bout. The opponent, this Pokemon the card is attached to just gets 20 extra HP, and that Pokemon's attacks do 20 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. Alright? So, this is much like a Muscle Band now. But let's think back then. It had a 40 base attack. If you discarded those 2 Water Energy, or those 2 whatever cards, it'd do 60. Put an Expert Bout, it would do 80. So the old Kingdra would do 80, and then 20 to the bench. Alright? So it was super good, and it got a plus 20 HP. So his HP got up to 150. Now let's try to make that happen for the new Kingdra. So first, of course, we're going to attach our Muscle Band to get that 20 damage. So now think of this, guys. Your attack is now doing 170 damage with a Muscle Band on it. All right? A normal EX these days comes out with 180 HP. That's what you take care of that with your Hypnotoxic Laser. So now with Hypnotoxic Laser and Muscle Band, you are doing 180 HP, knocking out most EXs. Okay? Now to get the extra 20 HP that Expert Bout had, we are going over to Training Center up here, guys. It says each Stage 1 and Stage 2 Pokemon in play gets plus 30 HP. So that is now going to make your new Kingdra have 160 HP. So it's almost up there with a Pokemon EX. Now, it also said Stage 1, so your Seadras are going to get that too. If we're against a Seismitoad, guys, and we are having a hard time getting our cards out because our trainers are locked, our Seadras have a better chance of staying alive until we can get a Kingdra, and then hopefully start knocking out Seismitoads. So, take one last look at these guys. Plus Power is back then is going to be the same as Hypnotoxic Lasers now. Expert Belt then is going to be the same as Muscle Band now, with the combination of a training center. I would use training center as the stadium, but there are other options. I just think training center is going to be your best one. Ball Power. Now, the old Kingdra and the old decks used to use a lot of various Pokeballs, as we would say. You have an Ultra Ball. It was slightly different back then, but now it's discard 2 cards from your hand, search your deck for Pokemon, reveal it, and put it into your hand. Awesome if you're just trying to get one Pokemon out, guys. But this Die Ball is where it's at. If you're not against a Seismitoad and you do not have item locks, your deck will be insanely fast. You can search your deck for a Horsey or a Seadra. Now, keep in mind that this new Kingdra is a dragon, so you cannot get a Kingdra from this card. However, if you have a repeat ball and you have one Kingdra out already that you got with Ultra Ball, all you need is a repeat ball to do the same. All right, get another Kingdra out. You're getting, you want 2 or 3 of your Kingdras set up and then your speed Pokemon. All right, so you're just hitting hard. This Die Ball is one of the better balls that I've seen, and it's really what makes this deck so fast. So guys, Ultra Ball, Die Ball, Repeat Ball. See how many copies of each you want to play. If there's another trainer card that works better instead, let me know what you guys end up using. I'd love to see the different play styles built off of this deck. Now, all right, so guys, here's our other trainer cards. Now let's look at energy retrieval. Put 2 basic energy cards from your discard pile into your hand. All right, so those 2 energy you discarded for your 150 attack, you can now get back straight into your hand. With Kingdra's growth, you can attach those same 2 energy in the same turn and do 150 again. Now let's look at Professor's Letter. Search your deck for up to 2 basic energy cards. Reveal them, put them in your hand, guys. This is all getting those 2 energy that you need into your hand so that you can consistently do 150 damage to your opponent's Pokemon. It's insane. Now this big question mark is play style. I might play another trainer card in here that somebody else wouldn't play. As I said, I am giving you the base. I'm giving you the backbone for a Kingdra deck. And I want you guys to play, and to experiment and see what other cards work great in here. Now, supporters. Let's look at, I have another then and now section. Roseanne's Research. Search your deck for 2 in any combination of basic Pokemon and energy cards. This card was amazing, guys. You especially, this is a must in a Stage 2 deck. Something that searches for basic Pokemon, especially if you're locked out by a Seismitoad. And it can get you basic. Now we cannot play, basic energy. Now we cannot play Roseanne's Research as it was then. But we have Pokemon Fan Club now. Search your deck for 2 basic Pokemon, reveal them, and put them into your hand. Okay? Almost the same thing, but without the option to get an energy. But if you're playing this Kingdra deck, Pokemon Fan Club is a must. Now, the first way I will test out is with Slurpluff, guys. So I'm going to get probably a Horsey and, start setting up my Slurpluff line. Now, Teammates is an awesome new card, and it reminds me of the old card Cynthia's Feelings. Shuffle your hand into your deck, then draw 4 cards. If your Pokemon were knocked out during your opponent's next turn, draw 4 more cards. So if your Pokemon was knocked out, you got to draw 8 cards, guys. This just really set you up for the next turn, and Teammates does the same. You can play this card only if your Pokemon was knocked out during your opponent's last turn. So it's still a knockout, okay? Search your deck for 2 cards and put them into your hand. Okay? So it's really just setting you up after you get knocked out. Who's going to knock you out? Because this is a trainer heavy deck. Seismitoad's going to knock you out. But if he knocks you out, Teammates is a supporter. You gotta choose any 2 cards you want. Do I hear Rare Candy and Kingdra? Yes, I do. Just play those cards. You have your Horsey out. It's the beginning of your game. The Seismitoad just knocked out one of your Pokemon, all right? You got your Horsey out the turn earlier with the supporter. Then you play your teammates. You get your Rare Candy and your Kingdra, and you play them. And Seismitoad's just not doing anything anymore. There's ways to get around him, especially in this deck, and it's through supporters. Now, let's look at some other supporters that are, of course, in every deck, and we must question, and even not all of them are here on this page. But you have your Professor Sycamore, discard your hand and draw 7 cards. It's just fast. Lysander, switch one of your opponent's bench Pokemon with his or her active Pokemon. You can definitely get this out, especially if he has a speed Pokemon in the back, like Slurpluff or Flygon. You could bring him out and then try to beat him down with your Kingdra. Shauna, shuffle your hand into your deck, then draw 5 cards. Shauna's work especially well in this deck because, unlike Professor Sycamore, you don't have to discard anything. And the way you build a Stage 2 deck is you are focused on one goal. For instance, Seismitoad, if you play Seismitoad, you have Hypnotoxic Laser, Enhanced Hammer, all these little things that are just knocking off and stalling your opponent. That you do not want to play that way in a Stage 2, guys. You want a clear, focused goal. Everything you do is to get that 150 damage attack off, and as fast as you can. Now, another card is Professor Birch's Observation, and this is a coin flip between, I think it's 7 or 4, or is it 6 or 4 cards? Let me check real fast. Yeah, it's 7 or 4. So, flip a coin. If heads, draw 7 cards. If tails, draw 4 cards. You would miss one than Shauna, but you have a chance to draw one more than Shauna. So, especially in a speed deck, well, why not play Professor Birch? Now, as I mentioned in the very beginning, you have your main attacking Pokemon, and you have your speed support Pokemon. And those are the only 2 generally that you want to play in a Stage 2 deck. However, there have always been what we call starter Pokemon, all right? And for this deck, there are other ones, just off the top of my head, I know there's a Klefki, if you're using a metal deck, that I think can search for a basic or 2 basic Pokemon, put them onto your bench. That's an example of a good starter. Manaphy is another great one. So, and you'd only use him for the Deep Sea Swirl. Shuffle your hand into your deck, then draw 6 cards. Well, people will be like, all right, well, what are you doing? Well, again, I'll mention Seismitoad since he's a huge factor. Or any other deck, it's just starter Pokemon really can help with the speed and the setup. Since you're playing Stage 2, it's never a bad thing to have a Pokemon out there in the very beginning that is setting up your whole deck for you. So setting up your Slurpuffs or your Flygons, setting up your Kingdras. Now, the thing with a starter is you're like, well, he's a basic. He has 70 HP. They're just going to knock him out. Yes, they are. And that's a good thing. He will last 2 turns. About 2 turns. Maybe more, maybe just 1 turn. But at least you're getting 1 attack off. And you can search for him with the Dive Ball. How many of starters would you play? Back in the day, some people played 4. So they would hopefully draw him right away. And then the other ones they would just use for maybe an Ultra Ball where you could just discard him. You don't need him anymore. Or, you know, a Professor Sycamore, discard a card. Discard a Manaphy that you already used to set up your deck. Now, there is one more thing that I feel I have to mention. And that is a different king. And there's one Kingdra still in this format. I am noting him for 2 reasons. First reason, if you are against a fairy deck, he does not have weakness to fairy. He has weakness to dragon. Okay? Second, he can be a great late game sweeper. All right. So let's say, we don't have Lysander's trump card where you shuffle all your cards back into your deck. Maybe say we don't have one of these out right now, or we don't want to use them. The game, we're discarding those 2 energy, and those energy are in your discard pile, lightning and water energy. Now at the end of the game, you set up one of your Kingdras as an attacker, and it would be this Kingdra. And maybe you need one prize card left. You would use Dragon Vortex. Does 20 damage times the number of water and lightning energy cards in your discard pile. I don't know if you want to use them. It's just a consistency thing if you want to keep it just the 4/4 original. But if you did want to add this Kingdra in, you could do 4 Horsey, 2 Seadra, 3 of the Primal Clash Kingdra, and 1 of this Kingdra is how you would play this late game kind of sweeper guy if you wanted to have him in. So guys, thank you for watching this deck profile and review from Trainer TV. Again, my name is Aaron. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure you guys like these videos, share them with your friends. Just get the word out there about Trainer TV and hit that subscribe button, guys, and I will see you later. Have a great day. Yeah.